I want to start by thanking Sashi Brown for the contributions he made to the Cleveland Browns organization. Dee and I had the privilege of working with Sashi, obviously, for several years, really closely the past couple of years, and I don't know that I've ever worked with a finer person or man, an individual of higher integrity than Sashi, and we certainly wish him the best in his future endeavors and know that he'll be very successful in whatever he decides to do. And once again, thank him for everything he's done for the Cleveland Browns. 5 or 6 weeks ago, Sashi and I had a conversation in which I told him that I thought we needed to think about having a more experienced person in our personnel group. Didn't really know what that looked like in terms of how things would be positioned or what roles would be. But we went out and began talking to various individuals, all of them former GMs, all of them, I believe, highly qualified to work for the Cleveland Browns and help turn this franchise around. In the course of those meetings with various individuals, we became very comfortable with John Dorsey. Spent a lot of time with John, spent a lot of time researching John's background, checking references, et cetera, and was particularly attracted to what he was able to, I guess really two things. One, John's background is, first of all, a player in the NFL, and then growing up through scouting in the Green Bay Packer organization, being trained by Hall of Famer Ron Wolf, and occupying about every position you could except for GM in the Packer organization. Went to Kansas City, where I think the year before John got there, they were 2-14. Over the next 4 years, they averaged winning almost 11 games a year. They were 43-21, made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. So obviously had been a highly successful GM. Felt comfortable with him from both a personal and professional level, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Yesterday we announced that Hue Jackson would continue to be our coach. We're very excited about that. I know there's been comments about Hue's record, et cetera, and I wouldn't call that just Hue's record. I think that record is on all of us, including ownership. We have had the ability to watch Hue up close. The NFL is a long season. It starts in late July and goes through early January. Hopefully ours will start to extend longer than that. It starts hot and it ends up very cold. And we have not always played well, but I think everyone would agree we've always played hard. Hue has kept the team playing hard, kept the players motivated, and I'm really excited to see what John and Hue can do working together. Really excited. I know there's questions about Hue and John have never worked before. They've never really spent much time or any time together. And I just want to assure you that having worked with Hue for the last couple of years and then spent a lot of time with John the last 5 or 6 weeks, I think their backgrounds are similar. They're football lifers, particularly NFL lifers. I think philosophically they line up, if not identically, almost identically. I think personality-wise they share a lot, both extroverted, high-energy individuals. And it's our expectations that they'll form a great team and help turn this franchise around. They talked several times yesterday. I've already had a meeting today, and Hue and John and I will spend time this afternoon. So we're excited to see them work together. I spoke a little bit about John and his background. I'm going to turn it over to John in a minute, but I think when you hear John speak, you'll see and hear someone with excellent background and experience in football, particularly in the NFL. He's really spent his entire adult life in the NFL. Is an experienced football person, has been a GM, has done everything you can do in scouting and personnel in the NFL, has tremendous contacts in college and pro football. I think everybody understands the capital that we have here in terms of both cap space and what we have for the draft this year. And I think we're fortunate to have somebody like John Dorsey come into our organization at this very opportune time. I also think it will be very helpful, and John will comment on this, having John here for our last 4 games, have him here for 3 weeks of practice, As I mentioned earlier, he's already spent time with the team this morning, get to know our players on a first-hand basis rather than coming to the building the first or second or third week in January when there's nobody here. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the GM of the Cleveland Browns, John Dorsey. John?
Thank you, Jimmy. It's my pleasure to be here. You know, I'm very honored. I'm very humble to be here. Guys, I love the National Football League. I love everything about this great game of football. First off, I just want to thank Dee and Jimmy for allowing me to, you know what, let's reawake this sleeping giant, the Cleveland Browns. I'm kind of excited about that. You know, normally I would introduce my wife. Unfortunately, she could not make it here today because the kids had a Christmas show, and she was determined that the kids were not going to miss that Christmas show. She'll be here coming next week. And I can't wait. You know, I look forward to working with Hue Jackson alongside of him. Like Jimmy said, I had a chance. Hue asked me if I'd come talk to the team, and I did. And it's that chance. It's what you want to do is kind of connect with that locker room. So that's why these next couple of weeks are very important for me to understand, you know, the culture, the people within the building, the players within the locker room. And that's exciting for me. And after we finish up here, I'm going to meet with the personnel staff, and we're going to kind of begin to assess and develop that plans. And, you know, as we go along in this thing, you know, the one thing that I always love about this is one of those iconic franchises. And this, to me, this has got one of the most unique fan bases in all the National Football League. And to me, that's exciting. You know, I've always liked the history of the game of football, and then when you mention the Cleveland Browns to me, it brings back vast memories, and I just can't wait to, you know, to try to build and establish this thing and just move this thing forward. Because you know what we want to do? We want to be competitive every year. We want to be AFC North. We want to compete with these guys year in and year out, and we're going to do that. I can tell you that. With that, I'll take you all's questions. That's all right.
Hue Jackson, is that a hard line with you coming back in 2018, regardless of what happens in the final 4 games?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it would be a mistake to just zero in on 18. We're planning on Hue Jackson being our football coach for a long time. He and John working closely together for a long time.
John, you oftentimes the GM likes to hire his own coach. How did you feel about this? And it sounded like it was kind of a prerequisite to taking the job.
I don't know if it was a prerequisite, but as I look at this with Hue, he has, you know, he's been in the league a long time. He and I have many, now we don't know each other very well, but we have begun to establish that relationship, and I know just being around him briefly, the time, you know, that I've been around him, I'm excited. Plus the people that I know and he know, you know, all the people I talk to about Hue, they love Hue. And they say, you two guys are going to work wonderful together. And I'm excited about that. And, you know, I can't wait, you know, again, this afternoon, once, you know, Hue gets off the practice field, you know, I just can't wait to sit down with him and just he and I just kind of sit and talk and just kind of develop a plan here.
Did you make some calls and things about Hue to check before, you know, you were in the process of being interviewed?
No, I think, you know, anybody worth his salt's going to make calls about anything, so you always want to call around. That's what you guys do.
I was hoping you'd answer it, and you found out what that made you comfortable with him even before you met him.
I like him as a man. Okay, I mean that's to me. I like him as a man. I like his, you know, his overall offensive schematic stuff. I think that's kind of cool. And I just like the way the team plays. They play hard, and I like guys that, you know, a team that plays hard. To me, it symbolizes the AFC North. You got to play hard.
How do you like stepping into a situation where you have 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks and all that salary cap money?
Well, any personnel guy worth his weight would be excited, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty, you know, I think Sashi did a nice job of creating some draft picks and creating some cap space there. But I'm excited. I think this, to me, this is an opportunity that not many personnel guys in my position would pass up. I mean, I think, to me, again, this is one of those iconic franchises which has an unbelievable fan base. And now we just got to get this thing rolling here. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to check our egos in at the door. We're going to work every day to go back to the AFC North.
John, there's been a lot of GMs that have come through this door, this building.
Yep.
And have said a lot of the same things you said. Why will it be different this time?
Well, you know what I know that I can do my jobs with the best of my peers in the National Football League. Two, I know I'm going to sit here and work, and I'm going to do everything that my God-given ability has given me, and I'll try to do it. It won't be from lack of work and lack of preparation. But then when you combine that with ownership, you know, I've had a chance to meet Dee and Jimmy and just sit and talk to them, and the one thing I've always felt and feel with them is how prideful they are. And I mean, they are very prideful people, and they want to see this thing turn it around. And when you have ownership like that, that gets me excited in that regard as well. And then I know that working in a collaborative relationship, we all use that term, but it's communications. It's, you know, treating people the way you want to be treated day in and day out. And we're all in this thing together. Not one guy has the answers, but if we do this together collectively, this thing can work.
Jim, assuming you expected that Sashi and Hue could also work together, much like you're talking about these guys working together, what went wrong?
You know, here's what I always try to do is learn from experiences, and have had a lot over 63 years, and then move forward. And I can't tell you for sure that these two guys will work well together, but I'll say this, I'm highly optimistic given their backgrounds and skill sets that John and Hue will work well together.
These are two more traditional football guys. Sashi was not. Was that the conflict?
You know, that might be one reason, and like I say, we learn from that and we move forward. And I think clearly we're moving to a more traditional model. I will say this, that, and I meant to say this in my opening remarks, that excited about Paul DePodesta remaining with the organization. Paul and John have not met, and they'll have the opportunity to watch the game together on Sunday and spend time on Monday. And Paul will play a key role for us going forward.
Mr. Haslam, John mentioned the fan base. I was just wondering, I'm sorry to pivot on you a little, but that fan base was kind of insulted by some of what was said yesterday. I won't go through the details. In a courtroom, that your company's statement did not address your fans or some of your players. Is there anything you'd like to say to address your fans or your?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up. I've said since the investigation began almost 5 years ago that we wouldn't comment, but yesterday's remarks that came out of the courtroom, I think, justify comments, and I'll just stand behind what we said yesterday. First of all, none of those individuals work for us anymore. Nobody that works for our company was present at that event. That's not how we act and do things, and those kind of remarks are intolerable. And I'm actually glad you asked that question.
Published reports that your board is paying for the defense of the men on trial. I don't know, A, if those published reports are true, and B, if so, do you continue to pay for their defense after what came out?
Yeah, it's, without getting into too much detail, it's traditional when employees of a company are sued or have a legal problem that the company, until those employees plead guilty or are found guilty, the company pays for their legal expenses, so that will continue.
Jimmy, you're comfortable with that at this point, sir?
That will continue.
On this case, just how difficult has this last month or so been for you with all that's been going on with the trial, obviously with the stuff in Tennessee and the stuff in Cleveland? You've kind of been pulled in a lot of directions. For you personally, what's this month been?
It's been tough. It's been really tough. Let me say this. I want to clarify something, and I want everybody to hear this. I had nothing to do with the coaching search at Tennessee, okay? Nothing. And I know there's all reports that I was tremendously involved. I'm a huge backer and supporter of the University of Tennessee, as is our entire family, but I was not involved in the coaching search at UT, okay? Very delighted with the outcome. Have not met Coach Pruitt, but Coach Fulmer, a good friend of mine, Charlie Anderson, both speak very highly of him, and we're glad to have him at the university, but I was not involved in that search. The entire investigation, Tom, has been painful and tough to go through. As you know, we are not on trial. myself nor the company, and so we can't comment. And we'll continue to not comment and see the investigation process, but it's not been easy.
Jimmy, what are you going to do about the quarterback position? What can you do? What will you do? What needs to be done to maybe even think about winning in 2018?
Well,
Using a starter quarterback.
excuse me. I think it's important. You know, that's why I was excited to get here and get a head start and be around the group and see from my own eyes and perspective those 3 weeks to kind of evaluate and see. I like the rookie quarterback who is here now coming out in the draft. We actually brought him up as one of the 4 or 5 quarterbacks in terms of the 30-player visit last year coming out in the draft. But I think what you have to do is you have to sit down as a group after the end of the season. Let's sit down as a group. I want to understand from a coaching perspective how they see it. I want to see how the personnel staff sees it. I want to sit down with the head coach and see how he sees it. And let's begin to build a plan moving forward and identify. This is very similar to, once this is a quarterback-driven league. We all know that, and we all know to succeed and to go a little bit farther and farther and farther, you need one of those guys. So I think it's an evaluation period that's going to take a little bit of while to put a plan together. You know, the draft is 4.5 months away. Free agency is like 3 months away. We have ample time to make a plan here.
By the quarterbacks who are available and are seen to be available in 18 draft?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the 18 draft, but how they play on the field. I mean, there's some players here, but how they play on the field, that's the first measuring stick. But also, there's other components that go into that in terms of understanding who they are, in terms of their ability to understand the game of football, the technical stuff of football. What kind of people are they? Do they fit into the culture that you're trying to establish? But you know what? It's not a bad class.
John, you were reunited in Kansas City with Andy Reid,
Yeah.
who you knew. You guys won three playoff teams
Yes, sir.
in 4 years. What happened? And if it didn't work out long term with a friend and then with a winning culture, what makes you think it could work out with a stranger in a losing culture?
That doesn't bother me because I measure every person for who they are, and I think relationships mean everything. I thought Andy and I had a very great relationship in terms of working together. We had the same objectives and goals, trying to create a plan. I thought we accomplished that. Who's to say in the National Football League things change every day? And I was very proud of my time in Kansas City. I thought we acquired a heck of a roster. I'd say a top 5 roster in terms of talent-wise. I think we went to the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years. I think that, I've established some really good relationships within that organization, and life moves forward. I'm with the Cleveland Browns now, and you know what? Let's roll.
On Tony's question, just to
Are you Mary Kay?
I am.
Okay.
Just to see your excellent resume, your record there and everything, and then to know that you were let go in June. Why were you fired from the Chiefs, or why were you?
No, you know what? They say, who knows? I don't know. I've had ample enough time to try to figure it out. I've sat there, I've tried to figure it out, but you know what? Again, every organization's different. Everybody moves forward at certain times, and you know what? I've learned from the past. I live in the present, but I'm building for the future.
Can you state your opinion of how influential the analytics should be in your job and in a football organization, and do you have to reassess what's in place here in that department?
No, you know what? I'm kind of excited to meet Paul. I've heard a lot of things about him. I'm a forward enough thinker in today's technology. I think in today's football, you have to have a certain degree of technology. If not, you're living in the Stone Ages. I mean, these things are going to help you advance. What I want to do is I want to analyze and see what kind of programs he has into place. I think there is a position of analytics to be played in football, but how do you go about doing it? That's the one piece I want to assess and see what they have in place. And then, you know what, Paul and I will see. He does more than analytics, too. Now, there's some other components that he does with this organization as well. I think first I want to meet him as a person. I want to see his goals and objectives and how he goes about things and see if it does fit into the system.
Jimmy, did you feel a need to to make this move now? Because the other Giants are going to be looking for a general manager. Some other teams might. Is that why you moved? The reason you moved
That
early?
played into the decision making. The hiring process in the NFL is difficult, and that everybody that's going to make changes will make them on. The last game is the 31st. Is that right? So there'll be a lot of changes made the first and the second in head coaches and GMs if this year follows the pattern. And we thought that it was important for us to get a jump on that, to get the best person possible, which we think we did, and then to allow, as I mentioned earlier, for John to come in the building, spend time with our coaches, spend time with our team, get a head start with the personnel guys where we hit the ground running, getting ready for free agency and getting ready for the draft.
Jimmy, have you reached out to Peyton Manning, or will you reach out to Peyton Manning in terms of trying to bring him on board with this organization?
You know, if I said I had dinner with him Monday night, would that cause a big ripple? All right, we had dinner Monday night. Okay, Peyton and I talk all the time. The majority of the time we talk about Tennessee and Tennessee football. Do we talk about the NFL some? Yes. Peyton's a very talented individual. I don't think he knows exactly what he wants to do with his future. Whatever he does, he'll be successful with, and we wish him the best, and we'll be close friends. The Haslams and the Mannings have been close friends since Peyton came to Tennessee at 18 years old, so that was 22 or 23 years, and I think that'll continue for a long time.
Do you expect this to be the extent of changes in your organization? Do you feel the need, there's a void anywhere that you'll reassess?
You know, let me take a stab at that, and then I'll let John answer it. The personnel cycle, their year really runs May to May, post-draft to post-draft, and John will have the opportunity to come in and analyze our personnel group, and they're right in the middle of getting ready for free agency, getting ready for the draft, Tony, and then I think John will take a step back. I'll let him comment. Do I expect there to be tremendous amount of change? No, but I think it would be unfair to John to not let him come in and meet. He's just going to meet with them really, literally for the first time after this meeting, so I think it's important for him to come in, meet the people, see how we have things structured and organized, and make decisions from there, and I'll let you comment on that.
No, like I said, you know, I think the very first thing is you want to sit there and you want to see who all these, you know, everybody is in the organization, see what their roles are in the personnel staff. To be fair, you don't want to come in here and be the guy that blows everything up automatically. You just can't do that. To me, that's not how you do business. But, you know, I think it's fair to say, you know what, let's do what's best for the Cleveland Browns moving forward all the way until April. Give them give everybody a five and a half, month window there to show what they can do. I in my past job, I used that same formula and it worked out well. And, there are very talented people in here. Now you just got to be able to see who they are and see how they work and to see if they meet with the same objectives and goals that you have in terms of moving forward.
John, when you took over Kansas City, was not a team with a good record. How did you turn it around so quickly, and have you been able to compare that roster with the one you're inheriting here and see how comparable they are?
Every team is different, and we all hear that. Every draft is different. I mean, every team truly is different. I think the one thing in Kansas City is we made a plan, and we identified what that plan was. And we identified with that plan being, you know what, we need to get a quarterback. Okay, so we decided, we looked at all the ways of acquiring a quarterback, and we felt the best way to do it, after understanding the draft and unrestricted free agency, we thought the best thing to do was to make a trade. So we tried to orchestrate a trade with Alex Smith, and we pulled that off. And you know what, Alex he met the same, his mannerisms and mindset was the same as the head coach. And I thought that was really interesting. But also in that position, you want guys that are, natural leaders, guys that truly guys come to them, guys that understand the game of football. So again, it's a quarterback-driven league. And then what you did is, we made a plan, and then from that plan was the overall plan of the team. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the team, and how do you go about building it? So what we did is we set a plan into motion, and we attempted to build it as quickly as we could, because I thought when you have a head coach like that, you want to get a jump start. And I foresee now, we're going to have to make some plans here too.
John, you just
John,
the leadership piece of
with your
playing
experience,
quarterback.
Excuse me, he was talking.
go ahead.
You just touched briefly on the leadership piece of playing quarterback, but what are the main characteristics and qualities that you think you have to have at that position?
Got to win one. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different variables that partake at that position. I think you have to have the physical skills that we all see. I think feet are important in today's football. I think accuracy is very important. Do they have the mindset of the head coach? Can they comprehend and digest that playbook? I think that's very important as well too. And do they naturally gravitate to him from a leadership component? What does he do in adverse situations? How does he react? Can he extend the play? Can he drive it and win it at the end of the game? These are the little things you look for as these guys play the game.
Jimmy, would you, just to get this on the record, did you try to get Peyton to come here in sort of like an overseer president role?
No.
No. Discuss. And the other thing is, did you satisfy the Rooney Rule? I see that John Wooten has been a little upset about how that all went down. So how
We
did
absolutely satisfied the Rooney Rule, and I'm disappointed that John didn't take the time to call us before making those statements. He did try to call late last night. I've tried to call him this morning. We'll have a good conversation, but we absolutely satisfied the Rooney Rule.
Can you tell us who you interviewed by any chance?
We're never going to comment on who we interviewed. I don't think that's fair to the particular individuals.
Speaking of quarterbacks, were you totally comfortable with the decisions to trade out of those spots where Wentz and Watson went over the last couple of years? And if not, is quarterback evaluation one of the reasons why you made this change?
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Do you mind?
No, sir.
I'm sorry. If you mind, I've seen the whole thing. That's okay, but I think it's proper for me since I know these guys pretty good. I think each year, each draft is different and how people evaluate different positions. I think each team during the draft evaluates teams differently. So, I mean, you never know in those situations. That's what the beauty of the draft is in terms of, this could have been or this could have been. But you just better make sure at the end of the day, that we're going to get one of these guys.
So could you address that?
Yeah, I think, let me say it this way, Bud. The Cleveland Browns are not going to be successful until we get a quarterback. And we obviously have Deshaun. We have 2 other quarterbacks on the roster. We're going to look at free agency, and we're going to look at the draft. As was mentioned earlier, we have a substantial amount of capital, and we're going to do whatever it takes to find the quarterback we need to be successful. And let me say one more thing. Excuse me. Let me say one more thing.
Hold on 1 second back there.
Let me say one more thing. That will be John's #1 priority. And during the process, we've gotten to know each other very well over the last several weeks. I think he would tell you, if you ask him, what did Jimmy ask you more than anything, it was about quarterback.
John, with your experience, what do you see Brown next 5 years?
Who was that? I'm sorry?
With your experience, where do you see Brown going to be in next 5 years?
What are the Browns
The
gonna-
Cleveland Browns and where they're going to be. I'm the eternal optimist. I believe there's good in everybody. I believe there's good in every organization. I believe that the Cleveland Browns, you know what? This weekend, they're going to win. I mean, I'm the eternal optimist. That's who I am. I would say, I would say with the right move, you could easily do this. I'm not going to say easily. You're going to pinpoint me on this. Through hard work and due diligence, all I'm going to tell you is we will give it our best effort, and we're coming in next year. We're going to compete in the AFC North, and we're going to try to reestablish some positions in the AFC North.
Hey, John, if you've been, Jimmy said that he's been looking at GMs for 5 or 6 weeks here. So I'm going to assume that even from a distance, you've kind of assessed what team you're taking over here. What are your thoughts?
In terms of the process?
What kind of roster you have?
From the roster, you know what? It's a young roster. I think we all know that. I think they play very hard. I think, any time that you can get a bunch of young guys working their fanny off day in and day out, and with that good coaching staff to coach them up and motivate them, you need to do that. But this is National Football League. This is hard to win week out and sustain week in and week out. It's a matter of doing the little things. And to me, there's a I like the roster here, and I like that the roster will be developing more and more from, in 18 and 19. I look forward to that, and I look to acquire even, some other players as well to, sustain that. So I think the objective is to make your roster as competitive as you can from the bottom up. Get some good guys at the top there, but as long as you can create competition amongst all those positions, that's going to bring out the best in all players.
You mentioned the young roster. Do you think the roster is too young, and what's your philosophy on just the value of having a good mix of veterans?
Well, it's a combination. It's a very interesting combination. National Football League is truly a young man's game, as you see. It really is a young man's game, but it also helps to have some established veterans in there as well. And there's some established veterans here. You guys, one of the greatest players in Cleveland Brown history. What's 73? Joe Thomas. That guy is tremendous. And you lose a guy, an asset like that. My God, to me, that's a big deal because he's a special player.
Was that plan that Sashi put in place 2 years ago, was the plan just too extreme and the tear down unnecessary?
I think, in fairness to Sashi, I think Sashi inherited a roster that was a little older, fairly expensive, and not very good. And he made the changes he thought necessary. Has it been really tough? Yes. I do think we're in position now to move forward, and hopefully to move forward fairly dramatically with the draft capital and the free agent capital we have.
The timetable of your meeting with Sashi lines up pretty much with the NFL trade deadline. How much did that experience?
Zero.
What did you think of that? You're unable to execute a trade when you...
Listen, I will place that way more on me than on Sashi. We were having a conversation, and I probably pushed the question asking further than I should, so I don't blame that on Sashi. I think we decided to push the go button later than we should. I think Sashi bore way too much, but I want to make clear that had nothing to do with this decision.
You talked a few years ago about the need for the coaching staff and the front office to be on the same page, and now you've learned how important that was. It seemed like that was the case early on with Sashi, and then apparently things fell apart. But why do you feel so confident going forward with John? He and Hue and everybody same page in this harmony.
I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, in that John and Hue have spent almost their entire adult life in the NFL. I think philosophically they look at things the same way, and I got a high degree of confidence that they'll be perfectly aligned, and they both understand how important that alignment is for our success.
Jimmy, just to follow up on something you said earlier when asked about Peyton Manning, not Peyton, but just in general, have you ruled out hiring a president or CEO to be the person who John and Hue and Paul would report to, or is it still going to be you and D, or is there a possibility of adding someone to do that?
It sounds a lot by your question that you think we need to. Our current plan is to have Hue and John and Paul continue to report to ownership. I would never say we would never do that. That would be irresponsible to do so, but we're comfortable with the alignment, the way it lines up, and excited to get going to work.
Jimmy, you've not been successful as an owner so far. Why should people have faith in you or your decision-making at this point?
I think that's a fair question. We have not done a good job as owners, and it has been harder than we would have thought. But I believe we have the right people in place. In all organizations, the key ingredient is people. I think we have the right people in place to move forward. And John said it earlier, and to win in the NFL and win consistently is very difficult. I think we have the right people in place with John and Hue and the people working under them to do that. And I'm actually really excited going forward, really excited.
What would you do if you determined that the problem here was ownership?
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, okay? Let me say this. I'm really confident we're going to get this thing turned around, okay? I'll just leave it at that.
Last one here, Terry.
When you said several weeks ago you started vetting people and looking at it. What were the one or two things that happened that led you to say, okay, I've got to go on a search to try to find this football guy?
Yeah, Terry, I don't think there were one or two things. I just think when we took a step back and look at what we've been through and where we were, where we are, we felt the need to get an experienced football person in here to help us at this very, very crucial time. And the more we had those conversations, the more it became obvious that that's what we needed to do. And the more we had those conversations, we talked with some very talented individuals, very talented. It became obvious that John Dorsey was the right guy, and I cannot tell you how excited we are to get him in the building and get him going.
Were there one or two people are you kind of used for sounding boards or for advice that said, look, Dorsey is really a guy that you need to go after?
Consistently across the board, and I had heard John Dorsey's. Of course, I watched what he did in Kansas City. Ron Wolf is somebody we talked to. He just went on and on about what a great individual person and talent scout evaluator that John was. So that was one of the people we talked to. But across the board, John's recommendations from all different types of individuals, younger, older, et cetera, were outstanding. And that, Terry, along with our personal experience, led us to extend an offer for John and John to accept to be our GM.